you, Mark, for the introduction, and thank you to the Funding Network and Ashoka for inviting me today. I'm just going to talk a little bit about my journey into what I do, to social entrepreneurialism and to fair finance. And I suppose the best place to start is that my parents are from Bangladesh, which is the very small country that everyone knows floods next to India. And as anyone who's a child, son or a daughter of migrants into a country, they'll know that most of their early years are spent watching movies they don't understand, reading books that make no sense, hearing lectures from people that you just can't connect with. And my mum is exactly the same, in forcing me to go through all of this. But the one thing I will give her credit to is that about 15 years ago, she introduced me to, she took me to a lecture to see an economics professor talk about how he was changing society in Bangladesh, how he was using finance and banking to empower women, how he was lending to people who didn't have any money. And he said something that was quite profound, that really stuck with me. He said, if you've got money, it's really easy to give money to people who already have it. What's quite hard is to give it to people who don't have it. And it just seemed like such a sensible thing to start thinking about. And of course, the only response to something like that is that you say that the guy is totally bonkers. There's no way he could be right. So back before the days of emails, back before the days of sending, working on the internet and sending things instantaneously, I sent him a letter explaining why he did it. And so he wrote me a letter back and said, well, why don't you come out to Bangladesh and find out what I have right? I went to Bangladesh, and he then went and won a Nobel Prize for being right. And I spent 2 years trying to figure out why I was wrong. And that was Mohammed Yunus of the World Bank, at the Grameen Bank. Those 2 years were really fascinating for me because I learned more about people, finance, relationships, and this funny notion of creditworthiness in a village in Bangladesh. You could have any indication of by living here in the UK, unless you'd experienced it. And growing up in the UK, our family had experienced it, and everything that I saw and could see that was going on around us in these villages in Bangladesh were exactly the same kind of issues that I knew my parents had gone through when I was in the UK. And it's quite weird when you come back to the UK wanting to try and fix that problem, and you tell people that there are somewhere between 4 and 5 million people borrowing from a guy who charges 600% to offer you finance at your door every day in the United Kingdom right now. It's quite hard when people don't believe you when you tell them that there are 2.5 million people borrowing from a guy charging you 2,500% for short-term payday loan. And it is quite tough trying to convince people that there are 250,000 people for whom it doesn't really matter what you charge them. If you don't repay, they'll just break your legs. And that's the illegal money lending market. People told me I was mad to even think about doing work in this area. And in fact, I was so mad that they wouldn't give me any money or any support to do it. So when confronted with something like this, what do? Well, you beg, you borrow, and you steal as much as you can get away with. And in this case, it was a credit card. I took £10,000 out on a credit card and started lending to people that nobody else wanted to lend to prove that income is not a determinant of your creditworthiness, to prove that people would repay if you trusted them, and that if you could find a new way of lending, you could totally change the way this business worked. I took that from a business that worked with 100 people to a business that worked with over 10,000 people. And now, 10 years after launching it, or 5 years after launching it, I've been able to prove that this is not only sustainable, it's totally scalable. And over the next 5 years, we're going to be taking 150,000 people out of the clutches of loan sharks and money lenders as we grow across London. It's great, isn't it? It's quite a nice feeling to know that you were right, I suppose. And I normally tell people that, as with all things, I mean, I can remember the first loan that I made. I can remember the first 10, I can remember the first 100 loans that I made. But the third loan really sticks in my mind, and I tell a lot of people about it. And Irene came to our office quite early on, probably the third person who walked in. And she had borrowed £200 to put a headstone on her husband's grave. 4 years later, having paid nearly £5,500 of interest on a £200 loan, she came to us for help. We were able to help her, take her out of the clutches of the person who's taken advantage of her, and find a way for her to sustain her life in a much better place. Now, on its own, that's a great story, right? That's a wonderful, life-affirming thing to make you feel like your work is making an impact. But if I told you that 5 years later we put that guy out of business, that makes me feel a lot better. A lot better. And if you want to know what social entrepreneurialism is, I think it's that. It's the chance to make big systemic changes, the chance to help not just the few that are around you, but the millions that really need the support. All of the projects that have been listed today touch on all of those, whether they're user voice, going to schools, Save the World and Mac UK. And I think they're all on that journey, trying to find a way of changing the problem into an opportunity. And it's a great honour to have the chance to say my words before them, introduce them, and it's a great honour to be here. So thanks very much for allowing me to share this.